Warm welcome to an exciting episode of the Monday Morning Learning Podcast. And today we have Ravi Iyer as our guest today. Good evening, Ravi, and warm welcome. Any welcome words before we start off?
Thank you so much for having me, Ravi. As I was joking, this is like Ravi speaking with Ravi. So it'll be, I hope the audience doesn't get too much of us, but I'm looking forward. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, as an introduction, I actually wanted to share a compliment given on LinkedIn by Rajiv Gupta from Flipkart. I'm just going to read it out. He says, data storytelling is a critical skill to communicate with impact in every role, every function, and every organization. And we underwent a detailed 4-week data storytelling program with Ravi and found it to be very relevant and easily implementable in what we do as finance professionals. Now, Ravi breaks down the vast topic into bite-sized, structured, and manageable components, which makes it easy for the participants to understand and apply different concepts. I could see an immediate impact on my team's data storytelling approach, and I would highly recommend Ravi to anyone who would like to learn this critical skill. That being your intro, I know you are an IIM alumni, and you bagged 11th rank in your CA final, right? I mean, that is something which actually was a question. So maybe let me start asking that. I mean, you've been a finance professional, that to chartered accountancy is pretty difficult to crack, that to 11th rank holder. Then you moved to your MBA and a very different kind of a career journey as such. So what were your thought process there, Ravi, to start with?
Yeah, so I mean that 11th rank is it's a bit of a misleading stat, I must say. I mean, I did get it. I was very, very good at giving the exam, but I don't think I was half as good or 1/10 as good or 1/11th as good in the actual profession of CA. And so I think it was a wise decision by me to not continue. Now, just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
One background sound, just reducing the air. And so MBA honestly was not a very deeply thought through decision. It was like, friends are giving it. Why don't I just give it? It's like, when you don't know what to do, you do an MBA kind of a thing. And I was really following the crowd. But I think it was good because it kind of opened my eyes and my mind to the possibilities far beyond finance. Mm-hmm. And eventually I found, after a few, hits and misses, I found my calling and saying consulting was good. And so 7 years was useful there. And then, of course, multiple milestones that happened until it culminated in the storytelling piece. Happy to share that. But yeah, so that was the quick answer to the CA MBA thing.
Excellent. Thank you, Ravi. So in terms of this special podcast, we got a goal objective to actually explore how storytelling can transform careers, leadership, and organizational impact across different stages of professional life. And we have, I think, 8 themed podcast. I'm not going to read through all, but I'm going to jump in directly to the first one on leadership journey and career evolution, Ravi.
Sure.
Here we're trying to trace your path and pivotal moments of growth. So a couple of questions there. How did your early experiences shape the leader you are today? And secondly, what have been the most defining moments in your career that shifted your perspective on leadership, Ravi?
Yeah, so I think many of them, for sure, Ravi, as you might imagine. But I would say in terms of the storytelling, early influences, reading was a very big one, right? My dad took me to a garage library when I was 7 years old in a place called Sion in Mumbai. And I was hooked. Oh my God, you can go get as many books as you want and read. And this is entertaining and this is fun. And so I think as you normally graduate from whatever Chacha Chaudhary and Tinkle and Enid Blyton and Agatha Christie to the more heavy fiction, I kind of went through that journey. To the point that I remember my 10th vacation, all I was doing is going to the library, picking books, coming back home and reading. I had no friends, no social circle. But I think that was useful because it allows you, or it builds in that DNA of reading, which is even very, very important to me right now, right? So I'm constantly reading stuff about good storytelling or storytelling examples on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on books, listening to podcasts, etc. I think that consumption part has been very useful. The second, I think, formative influence was some bit of writing. I was not really a prolific writer or anything, but I started some writing in grade 11 or so in my college days, where I would just go to a trip with friends, come back, and I realized that no, something interesting happened. I have to pen this down, right? So it's a feeling that every writer, I think, identifies with that. When something important happens, you can't keep it inside. You have to put it down on paper. It almost like is giving birth. And so that's a very, like, I think, fun experience that I remember from that time. And I it's been up and down over the years. In the last 9 years, I've been far more deliberate about it. But I
Mhm.
think I'm glad that whatever work I started on writing at the early stages was useful, and friends encouraged me, and even family. So I think that was good. So I think those two, in terms of the early influences on storytelling. And on career moments, like, yeah, I think there have been many, I would think, but there is one that comes to mind. Right? One as a story, so I'll share that, and then if there's any follow up, you can ask. So
Sure.
this is not so much on storytelling; it was more on relationships. So
Mhm.
this was my first boss, a guy called Gopal Sarma in Feedback Ventures, my the post MBA, my first job, and he was very, like, humble, kind, and very people person. And we had just gotten an assignment with a large Australian mining company through a connector, through a person that he knew. Let's call him Amit, right? I forget the real name. So now Amit gave us the connect, and the assignment happened. It took 2 3 months. We did the assignment. We had a good run. The client was happy. Billing done. Everything done. Now, after 3 months, right? Gopal calls me into his cabin and says, "Ravi, let's have a call." So I'm thinking he's obviously calling the client. No, he calls Amit, the guy who connected with the client, right? And he says, "Hey Amit, you know what? Thanks for the earlier connect that you had done with this client, and we just finished the assignment. It went off very well. We just wanted to thank you." Right, that's it.
Mhm.
So just it was a teaching moment for me that hey, go back and connect with the people who have helped you. Don't
Mhm.
forget them. And what I really liked about that was that Gopal could have just done that call himself, right? I was not
Yeah.
necessary for that call, but he just made it as a teaching moment,
Mhm.
involving me also into that. Yeah, and it's a moment that has stayed with me. So yeah, I think like this there are many moments, but yeah, these are the ones that I think influence us and inspire us.
Thank you. Moving to purpose, values, and future of work, we're looking at anchoring leadership and values and navigating disruption. What personal values guide your decision making in both professional and personal life? And with AI and automation transforming work, what timeless human qualities must leaders preserve, Ravi?
So the AI one is super scary, right, Ravi? I mean, I'm really thinking that in 5 years will I have a job, or people will say, just write my story for me. Yeah. So no, I've thought about this, and I think there are timeless qualities that we still need to bring to the table, um, especially as humans, but also as storytellers, right? So in fact, the book, and we'll talk about that in some time, that I've written recently, I've tagline I put as saying timeless techniques of storytelling, right? It's not the fad of saying that, oh, this is how you can use ChatGPT 5.0 or whatever, right? That
Mhm.
will come and go. But storytelling has stayed with us for a long time. So similarly on values also, it's an interesting question that you asked. And when I was reflecting, I realized that the similar values guide me on life as well as storytelling. So for me, both are really connected. And the I would break it into three values mainly, Ravi. I think one is empathy, that as a good storyteller, as a good human being, really you have to constantly be thinking of what is my audience going to think. And in empathy, I kind of call it as two types, right? There's intellectual empathy and there is emotional empathy. So
Mhm.
emotional empathy, we all understand that, know how the audience is feeling, and don't be harsh. Don't be, if you want to give bad news, don't be rude, harsh, all of that, right? That part we know. The trickier one, or the one that in storytelling is very useful, is intellectual empathy, which is that if I'm explaining something complex, technical, difficult, detailed to a person, I need to have the intellectual empathy to understand how will my audience receive this data, right? And here the barrier in storytelling is what we call as the curse of knowledge, right? We know something so well we forget what it is not to know it.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking to people, I'm always kind of thinking that, hey, do you know about this background? Can I assume that I can use this jargon with you? Jargon with you? Can I
Mhm.
assume that you know this concept, etc.? So constantly, therefore, knowing that this person will not know that, let me explain that to him, right? Is a core trait of me as a person. Like, it's a value for me, and for me as a storytelling value, right? Irrespective of AI. So empathy, number one. Number two, for me, is authenticity.
Mhm.
And this has become more important in the age of AI, because the what we are going to see is a world flooded with good but not differentiated content, right? So you will likely have people writing perfect prose, no grammatical errors. So
Mm,
we've had, I was just, as a digression, there was a contractor who's working with my father-in-law on a project, right? And he's probably, 10th grade or whatever, right? And
mm,
on the WhatsApp group, his messages are perfect, like no errors, no spellings. How come?
mm,
He's obviously using AI, right? And that's great. I think it's amazing
mm,
that AI is helping all of us to achieve that, that bare minimum, which is good. But
mm,
now, if you can't say show up and say, hey, my prose is perfect, that's not good enough, right? So you have to stand out, and one way to stand out is to be authentic, right? What is it that
mm,
you think, you truly believe, you truly are? And it might be your quirky sense of humor, it
mm,
might be your belief in the right use of emojis or memes or whatever, right? Of course,
mm,
assuming that it's okay for the workplace. And so bring that authentic self
mm,
that you have. And authenticity has like two, three parts, right? One is, of course, saying that, you try not to hide who you really are. But also to me is um, alignment between your thoughts and words and your actions. So if you're thinking something, ideally you should be able to say it clearly without
mm,
offending the other person,
mm,
keeping the empathy thing in mind. And if you're saying something that, hey, I will send it to you by Friday, you should ideally do it on that, right? So that is also an important part of being authentic. So that's a second big value that I feel is important. It's not easy,
mm,
but you should keep trying to do it. And the third one, when I've in storytelling or in a, is to have a sense of strong data-driven clarity, right?
mm,
Often people might be authentic, that they are true and honest. People might be empathetic, but they base a lot of ideas on opinion. They base a lot of ideas on emotion, on saying that, I feel we must do this. I believe we must do this.
mm,
Does the data support you on that? And especially in today's day and age, when there is so much fake data, so post-truth world that we are living in,
mm.
always be curious and skeptical and humble. I think on that front, right? That
Yeah.
yes, I may be wrong. I will be curious to find if I'm wrong and if
Mm,
somebody else is better. And I'll keep trying. I'll be skeptical about the data sources that others are doing. None of these are easy. But yeah, so I remember writing a post about this sometime back, and I call it the ACing, ACE, right? So
mm,
authenticity, clarity with the right data, and empathy. So if you can try and manage all three,
mm.
especially in storytelling in an AI age, it can help you stand out.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Ravi. Uh, Moving on to storytelling for students and early career professionals. Here we're actually using stories to stand out, build credibility, and get started in careers. Questions are on how can students or fresh graduates use storytelling and resumes, interviews, and networking to differentiate themselves? And could you share any personal example or examples of how story, yours or someone else, created a breakthrough early in a career?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a slightly more difficult one because many students might say, Ravi, I've not really done too much in life to be able to tell a grand story, right? But that's fine. Even whatever you have done, it's about differentiating from the others who are all pretty much in the similar boat of your, profile.
Mm,
But when you're answering a question, let's say in an interview or in an interaction, I would kind of give two distinguishing pieces of advice, right? Number one, your story, your pitch is not about you, it is about your audience. Find out who is your audience, where are they coming from, where do they want to go, right? What are their big projects?
yeah.
So I remember doing this conversation with Sajid Pai, the investment partner at Bloom Ventures, and he
Mm,
kind of framed this quite well, saying that you have to find where your narrative fits into your audience's narrative. So
mm,
almost like saying that, sir, I realize that your organization is now embarking on a huge modernization strategy or is embarking on a huge move to generative AI technologies. My background as a dash, fill in the blank with your background, your strength, your skill, whatever, can help in achieving that goal, right? So
mm,
you're not putting your background as the front and center of the conversation. The front and center of the conversation is the audience's need. And you're
mm,
kind of saying, hey, by the way, what I have done, what I have can help you in doing that, right? It's a better way to frame that conversation. I think that's one. Second thing is, a lot of the time people put too many empty words in their resumes or CVs, right?
mm,
Persevering person or
mm.
very hardworking or collaborative, for example.
Yeah.
Good, but these words kind of mean nothing, right?
Mm,
So if you're saying collaborative, tell a story of a time when you actually showed collaboration, right? So the storytelling principle we tell that is show, don't tell, show,
mm,
don't just tell, which is that. instead of saying, hey, I'm collaborating, you could say, hey, there was once this time in the college when we had to do this fest, and we had to combine our resources with the sports team and with the dramatics team. And
Mm,
initially they both had a big problem that they didn't want to do it for a certain reason.
mm,
And the way we, made them realize the benefit is that, what's in it for the sports team, what's in it for the dramatics team, and eventually ended up doing like a very good event or something like that, right? So I'm skipping over details, but
yeah.
the an incident with details here
Mm,
will do a much better job in demonstrating your collaborative nature
mm,
than the empty word of collaboration, right? So
absolutely.
incident, anecdotal stories that
Mm,
show your skills, your values, your character traits can be quite powerful. So think of those, write them down, be prepared with them so that you're able to tell them not like off the cuff, but actually tell them as a good story, right? Like I said, the Gopal story.
yeah.
That's a very good example of Gopal being a great relationship person rather than me telling that word, right? That doesn't help.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think these would be two ideas that I would give for people who are just preparing. And in my own case, examples of stories like this which have created a breakthrough. So one, I mean, there are a few that come to mind, but one which is not really. It seems very simple at the end of it, but it really made a big mark, right? So I was doing consulting from 2005, in my job as a consulting firm, and we've been presenting to various clients over the years. And
Mm,
this must have been 2008 or nine. And our typical form of presentation was share all the data that we found, share every analysis that we have done, right?
mm,
You show the client that you've done a lot of work was not what we would say, but what was probably going on in our head, right? And
mm,
so we have done this analysis, this pricing analysis is there, oh by the way, this growth, oh competitor analysis, everything is there, and it'll be like section after section.
mm,
And the clients would not necessarily say, that's horrible, but they would sometimes be like, hey, this is too confusing, too overwhelming. So
mm,
once I met a client called Abhishek Sharman. He was a private equity guy in an office in Delhi, and I just asked him, any feedback do you have for us? How do we do better, right?
mm,
And he just said something very simple. He just said that, Ravi, I think you guys over-index too much on information depth, but you should focus on narrating the story. I don't know why that word at that time just hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean,
right.
it seems like he
Mm,
didn't give any major gyan, but I
mm,
think I was ready to get that information, that input at that point in my career. And I realized that, oh, yeah, we have to really leave out things which are not relevant and tell a story on every page so that the whole slides, if you read the entire presentation, if you read
mm,
it, reads like a story, right? And it was like a turning point for me. And I don't think anybody else might have had the same reaction. It was just maybe me at that time that helped. But yeah, so that was one example that I remember that really changed. And after that, things became better for me.
excellent. Thank you. So moving to the mid-level professionals now,
Yes.
how do we actually use stories to navigate growth, influence, and leadership transitions? Questions around, again, similarly, how can mid-level managers use storytelling to influence upwards and gain visibility? And many mid-level roles rely on data and analytics. And how can professionals present numbers in a way that tells a compelling story rather than just a dry report? I think you just narrated
Yeah, so this is kind of my current bread and butter, right? I
that.
teach pretty much all the time
Mm,
professionals who are 35 to 45, 50, that age band, who are really good at what they do, right? And
mm,
technically very sound, know all the numbers and the data. If you ask them questions, the answers will come. But
mm,
if you tell them to give a presentation, it ends up being a very, very detailed dump of information, right? So
mm,
the story is missing. And the long answer to your question is a 2 day workshop or whatever. But the short answer, I would say, keep two acronyms in mind. They are quite powerful, right? Maybe I'll add a third there. So three frameworks. Number one framework is think in terms of how to bluff to your audience, not BLUFF, sorry, BLUF. So bluff is a useful acronym to remember. Bluff means bottom line upfront, wherein you're not keeping a suspense or a secret from your audience saying that, we went to the market and we found X and X led us to Y and Y led us to Z and Z after we did the analysis, we realized that this
mm,
market is not very interesting, right?
yeah.
Don't keep that suspenseful answer to the end. Start
Mm,
by saying, we realize this market is not interesting. That's it. Give it away. Give away the surprise, right?
yeah.
You don't worry that the audience will, oh, they'll know everything. No, it's fine because they
Mm,
will be curious to know. Are really? I thought it had. Tell me more. and then you can kind of go into the detail, right? So
Sure.
I would say that is one crucial acronym for people to remember: bottom line upfront, or BLUF. Second connected acronym is, now when you've given the bottom line upfront, which is a one sentence summary of your entire study, of your work that you have done, of your review, of your proposal, whatever, and it takes some time to
Yeah.
craft that sentence. It's not an easy one, but it's a good skill to do. Then you should be able to tell the next detail, not by saying, okay, I've given you one sentence, now I'm going to do a 40 slide presentation.
Mm.
Dude, like, that's too much, right? Can you divide the rest of your talk into what I call as the 139 story spine? So what is the 139 story spine? It is your ability to tell your story, and without, or without any slides, any visuals,
Mm.
in just one sentence, which is nothing but the BLUF, in three sentences, which is basically breaking that one into three sub parts, and three is a guideline. It could be four,
Yeah.
but not 10, right? So three to four.
Mm.
And then further three becomes further three, that becomes nine, and nine can become 27, 81, and so on. But yeah, we'll stick to 139, right? So if you're able to think of your story in a 139 story spine, where you've got one, then three, and then nine, it gives a tremendous amount of clarity, that if anybody stops you anytime and they say, hey, tell me quickly, what did you find? You
Mm.
have a one sentence summary. A little more time, okay, three. A little more time, okay, nine. And then further on, right? And that one page somebody reads, they basically get, hopefully, the entire picture, right?
Yeah.
It's a simple powerful idea, not easy to
Mm.
crunch it all, to condense it, to distill it all to the 139,
Yeah.
but it's a powerful one. And here is where AI actually can be powerful, right? You can actually
Mm.
feed in all your data and tell, hey, make this for me. It'll actually make it. I know, okay, it'll happily do it.
Mm.
I would still say build that muscle
Yeah.
of distilling, of
Mm.
compression, right? So there's a nice line by Sam Altman where he says that compression is a secret to intelligence, right? So all AI is basically doing nothing but that. It is
Mm.
ingesting millions, whatever, like tons of data, and then compressing it to make it intelligent, right? Now, sure, you can rely on AI to do that, but don't completely outsource it. So you should be able to think with AI. So you should also have that, the
Mm.
basic skill built. So I would say 139 story spine for breaking down the BLUF. And the third acronym that's useful, especially for mid management presenting to senior stakeholders,
Mm.
senior business stakeholders, especially if you're technical and you're presenting a business guy, is the acronym known as WIFI, WIIFY. So it means, what's in it for you? Don't just say, I built this new product feature.
Mm.
Okay, what's in it for you? What's in it for the audience, right?
Yeah.
Buy this feature now. We are likely to have a 10% improvement in conversion. Oh wow, great, thank you so much, right? So that converts the
Mm.
feature into the benefit, right? Often we are very focused on saying, this is the information I've got, this is the feature I've built, this is the update I've done. So
Yeah.
what's in
Mm.
it for me is what the audience is asking, right? So you're trying to answer that question, what's in it for you, for the audience. So if you're able to do, I think, bunch of these, then you'll have a much more compelling, clearer, and more persuasive pitch.
Ravi, this is of so much help personally for me, and I'm pretty sure for my listeners as well.
Thank you.
Very, very useful. Thank you for that. Coming to the senior leaders in transition now, harnessing stories to reinvent, reposition, and stay relevant. A bit of background is that, off late, at least this year, I've been in touch with a lot of senior folks who've been moved out of companies after working for 32 years. I've been listening to their stories. So that's the background as to why I put it here. So for senior professionals facing layoffs or reinvention, how can stories become a bridge to new opportunities? That's number one. And senior leaders often present dashboards and business metrics. How can they weave these analytics into human-centered stories that inspire trust and action?
Yeah, also important. And it you may assume that as a person has become very senior, a CXO level, they will be naturally good at storytelling. Not necessary, right?
Mm.
It's not that you reach a certain level, automatically the software gets uploaded in her mind. It has to be built like any other skill. And so a lot of the points that we said earlier are relevant even for senior people, right? Because
Yeah.
even for a senior person, there is somebody, some stakeholder above or connected to them. Wi-Fi is important. Even they need to condense their information and say in BL.U.F. But these are usually, they're relatively better at some of these, right?
Sure.
So the one part of your question was senior leaders who need to be able to manage transitions, especially now with AI and jobs being under threat. So I would say, again, the you as a senior leader, you have so much work that you have done, right, over the decades, not even years.
Yeah.
uh, Try and boil down the impact of your work again into three key pointers, and for each pointer, try and quantify the impact on ultimate stakeholders. So instead of saying that, hey, I worked on this project that set up this new factory or something like that, right? That this new office. Instead, saying that we built this project 3 months before time and at a 20% or a $4 million cost saving, right? So hard numbers that you're giving that makes the audience see the benefit. Similarly, for some other thing on the revenue side, similarly, one more thing on the attrition or retention side. So any work that you have done, can you connect that to hard impact on the business? It's difficult to ignore that, right? So especially when you're having conversations, make sure that those numbers are there and coming out very, very clearly in your stories. The other one that for senior leaders I think is very important is that they would have had a bank of personal experiences that are very powerful, right? That tell who they are. So by the time you're 45, 50, you kind of know who you are. You are more self-aware, right? And so telling stories of your own to get the point across of who you are can be quite powerful, and especially if these stories are self-deprecating, right? It can be quite a powerful way of connecting with your audience. So, like many stories come to mind, but like one story that I'm just remembering, which is also there in the book, is Indra Nui, right? So when she became in PepsiCo, she became the president and I think CEO in around 2010 or something. It was very very senior, role that she had gotten, and the first woman to become the president, first woman of color from a different, yeah. So like it's incredible, right? What she achieved. So she had gotten the news. She's gone back home somewhere in the US, and she enters her house, and through the kitchen door, her mom is awake, and so her mom looks at her, and before Indra Nui could even talk about her yes, her mom says, "Hey, we are out of milk. Can you go and get some from the store?" And she's like seething, and she's like, why don't you ask, I forget her husband's name, why don't you ask my husband? So he seemed tired. He just came back from work and he seemed tired, so he's gone to rest. So she's terribly upset, but because her mom has asked her, she goes back, gets back into the car, goes to the store, comes back with a gallon of milk, drops it on the table with a thud, and then she says, "You know what? I've just been appointed president of PepsiCo today, and you're just asking me to go and get some milk." So her mom's reaction was a little bit of a shock thing, right? Where she says that, "Hey, listen, you may be the president or whatever of PepsiCo, but at home you're first a wife and a mother and a daughter. So leave that crown in the garage." So that statement is actually quite famous because she's said that in multiple way. And now, so that moment has stayed with Indra, right? And so she stayed written that in her book. She shared it on various forums, and it's a complex moment. It's, on the one hand, it does say that yes, howsoever senior we become, whatever we achieve in our home, we should like not let that affect our relationships with others, right? I think that's a fair point. But also, it's a complex thing of saying that if a man had come in and done that, maybe he would not have gotten the same reaction and so on. So it's a complex one, and she says that in those same words in her book. But now that moment had a outsized impact on her, right? And it's a great story to share with others, and it has impact on other people on a different way. So for senior people, I would say reflect on moments like these in your own career, your own life, and moments which have changed your point of view, your belief system, your values on something fundamental, right? And share those stories. Those stories can be inspiring stories of when somebody helped you when you were in need, and how much you valued that. A moment where you made a big mistake and then somebody was kind to you. A moment where you were kind to somebody else. Those are also good. And of course, self-deprecating stories are better in these cases. But I think as a senior leader, having a bank of these stories can be great differentiators, because too many times I've seen senior leaders when they are asked to say a few words, say for 5 minutes, it's too abstract, yeah, like too much jargon, too much abstraction. If you ask somebody after like 2 hours, forget about 2 days, okay, what did that person say, you'd probably not remember anything. A story like this will be remembered for a very very long time. So yeah, if you want to be memorable in what you say, speaking less is fine, but speaking stories, maybe a self-deprecating joke is also good. Maybe a concrete example, a demo, multiple things, questions, surprising, yeah, lots of ways are there. But try and be memorable in the short, brief moments that you're there when you're speaking, especially to junior people.
Lovely advice there. Thank you so much. So
Thank
many
you.
insights around this. Now, one thought which was popping up was that in there are platforms like a LinkedIn or a Substack where we can actually write stories. Would you have any kind of other platforms where these guys can actually try and then be themselves and share their wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I think today's day and age, LinkedIn is probably the easiest platform, right? And you must, if you have not, if you must follow Karthik Srinivasan, who's brilliant on this personal branding. If you want to build your own personal brand,
Mm,
and I agree with him when he says that think of it as insurance. You may not need right now, but who knows in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, if you want to do something on your own, you
mm,
can't suddenly start saying, today I will start, right? So, as they say, the right time to build your personal brand was 5 years back. The
mm,
next best time is now. So,
mm.
start in some way, right? And LinkedIn, the advantage is you already, if you worked for 10, 20, 30 years, you already would have multiple people who are connected with you. So, you
Yeah,
already have a readership base, right? So,
yeah.
instead of putting on a blog where it's difficult to build a following,
Mm,
LinkedIn is good. A second is, as you rightly said, Substack, because LinkedIn may you don't have connect, you don't have, I'm sorry, guarantee that it'll actually reach your followers. The algorithm, it's tricky.
mm,
But in a Substack or in a newsletter, you have email IDs, right? So you have a better connect to that audience. So
mm.
these two are, I would say, the best two ways to start.
Sure.
And then, yeah, if some of you are more visually oriented, Instagram can be great. I'm not there, but I think
Mm,
that can be good. YouTube is like is only growing, so that's also a potential there. But I think all of these take a little more time.
sure.
LinkedIn, Substack, possibly Instagram, definitely three places where you should start, and try and follow the work of Karthik Srinivasan, including I've done a podcast episode with him where he gave some ideas on how leaders can do this, right? So happy to link that in the show notes here. So he's really good.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Ravi. So moving to storytelling in organizational change and transformation, we're looking at shaping culture, inspiring teams through narratives. Again, a couple of questions are around, can you share examples where storytelling helped align people during a difficult transformation and in times of uncertainty? How can stories provide clarity and direction when facts alone may not be?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are, I think, many lovely stories of leaders galvanizing teams through the power of, and I'm going to use the word storytelling techniques, right? The word story sometimes gets as a misnomer, saying that, oh, it has to have like a place and a time. Of course, those things are there,
Mm,
but you can also galvanize an audience with a powerful speech, right? Martin Luther King, when he gave that I have a dream speech, it's not necessarily a story, but he was telling, he was making people believe in the vision of the future, right?
mm,
So that's a great example of a leader, aligning people during very, very difficult times. Obama, the yes I can, yes we can speech, which galvanized the Democrat. I mean, at least in 2008 to 16, they had a great run, and
mm,
his stories were great there. So one from the business world that I read last year was very interesting. There's this book called Shoe Dog. It's the memoir of Phil Knight, who was the CEO, founder and CEO of Nike, right? And it's a very, very interesting read, and like throughout peppered with stories and insights. I don't know how he was able to remember all these things that happened over decades.
mm,
So one story that I particularly remember was when um, these guys had basically the foundation of Nike was not through its own shoes. They were like a distributor for a shoe brand called Onitsuka. It's a Japanese brand. It still is existing. Nike has far taken ahead, but at that time they were the distributors for Onitsuka, and they were the sole distributors, and they were doing very well, growing very well. But there
mm,
were always troubles with the Japanese relationship. They would undercut them, or they would try and go to somebody else, and there would be delays in sending the shoes, etc., right? So
mm,
they were having some challenges, so eventually they started doing something on their own. They started manufacturing shoes in their own brand. That's when the Nike brand was born.
mm,
And Onitsuka found out, and they sued them for a big amount of money. And there was a particular time when it felt like these guys would like have to shut shop, right? This was, I think, early 1970s. And
mm,
so Phil Knight describes that scene in the book, and I don't have the exact description now, but broadly it is like, he's sitting with his leadership team, and everybody's shoulders are slumped, saying that, we are done for now. I don't know whether I can get my next salary. Kids' school fees are there. Inflation was high. There was unemployment. The Vietnam War. Lots of
mm,
general. It was a gloom scenario, and on top of all of that, survival because Onitsuka were likely to sue them, right?
Yeah.
So at that time, Phil Knight kind of, told them that, what, folks, we have Onitsuka right where we need them. This could be the best thing that happened to us. And we were like, what is wrong with him? How can be the best thing? We are in like the doldrums and you're saying the best thing. He says no. This is the kick that we needed to finally say we will ditch them and we will go out on our own. And how many times have we been upset with the delays that they have done? How many times have we been upset with the design issues that we have had with Onitsuka? How many times have we had in the logistical issues that we have had with them, and so on and so forth, right? And isn't this a chance to reclaim our own independence and go out on our own and find the best suppliers who can the make the shoes for us and then own our entire brand, own our marketing, right? So you give a very inspiring speech to the people. And by the end of that meeting, people were completely charged up. They're like, okay, let's find out. I know we can go to that supplier in China, is coming up really well. Oh, we can go to this distributor here. Oh, we can hire this person for marketing. So instead of the doom and gloom, they were completely charged up to say, how can we build this brand called Nike, right? And we all know how that panned out. So it panned out really well for Nike, which is like, took way ahead than Onitsuka. And so that moment for me was a good example of a leader, really through the power of storytelling, through the power of words, really nothing else. He just said the right words, right?
Yeah.
He charged up that team, and it was very inspiring. So there are many moments like these. Especially if you want to find such moments, I would say good examples are business biographies, right? They can be a little hagiographic. People may talk in good terms, but you'll find some good examples like these. So as leaders, I would urge you to read good business biographies. Indra Nooyi's book has a bunch of them. Bob Iger's book has them. This one, the Pixar, Ed Catmull, the Pixar CEO, lovely
Mm.
stories of these, how business leaders use this. So yeah, all of these are lovely stories that have them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, your
Uh,
second question was about.
Second was you touched it in times of uncertainty. How can stories provide clarity and direction? I think that.
Yeah, and so I think these kind of tell you, right, and the whether it is, I would say, definitely uncertainty also, and during other times, stories break through the clutter, right? Because it's easier to remember. You're not trying to hold multiple, that 7 point program or these 25,000 facts. Those
Mm.
come and they go away, right?
Yeah.
A simple clear story is something that we remember better,
Mm.
and it packs in the emotional punch also, because the way, especially, and there are some specific tools of rhetoric, by the way, that Phil Knight was using in his speech, right? And rhetorical tools are
Mm.
basically nothing but the use of music in prose, right? So music is emotion. So you might think, oh, but I'm a businessman, how can I use music? You can use, right? So rhetorical tools, if you're able to use, there are tools like anaphora, which Obama was a big favorite of. There are tools like anadiplosis and bunch. So all of these I've written about. And so if you're able to pack in that memorability and emotion, the chances of your audience remembering and acting on what you say, it really goes up.
Absolutely. Thank you. A lot of tips there for the audience, Ravi. Moving to mentorship and talent development through stories, Ravi, we're looking at guiding and growing talent by sharing lived experiences. Now, who were some mentors who significantly influenced your journey, and how did their stories shape you? And how can leaders use storytelling to mentor and nurture the next generation of professionals, according to you?
Yeah, oh my God, there's a long list of people who have helped me. First and foremost, my amma and appa, my mom and dad, who just by the way the people they are, the reading influences, writing influences, I think they've been like big influences.
Sure.
And when it comes to the professional side, I think at work I had a ton of mentors in my first job itself, right? So the three people who hired me, Gopal, Mukesh, Monica, I think they've been tremendous mentors just as human beings. I think that number one, also giving me a lot of confidence. The way Mukesh gave me confidence to run my own project, the way Monica has been, constantly demanding high quality outputs, and made sure that nothing short of the best would go. The way Gopal would keep the client front and center. I think all of those people help. There was one client who helped me a lot, a guy called Shravan Talwar. He runs a hospital chain called Mulchand in Delhi, and he was the ex McKinsey guy. So we were actually consultants to him, but he was more a coach and a mentor almost, right? So he would take our slides, and he was obsessed with good quality outputs. He was not saying, give me the answer. He would say, your answer has to be done well. Your slides have to be looking well. So we actually got tutored in the McKinsey style of storytelling because of Shravan. So
Wow.
a huge, value to what he kind of added. And then many other clients have also helped. But post this, there have been two, three people who have helped me after the consulting and the this stint, right? So there's a person called Sriram Subramanian who's in Pune, and he runs a training workshop, training firm called Mind Matters. And he was the one who introduced me to this pyramid principle, which is ex McKinsey consultant called Barbara Minto who came up with it. And this 139 story spine that I shared, it is nothing but the pyramid principle. I've just rebranded it. So I didn't even know it existed. But when he told me, I was like, oh wow, this is powerful. So huge thanks to Sriram for that. Another very excellent communicator and storyteller called Amin ul Haq, who runs a storytelling firm called Storywalas in Bangalore. So I've had the privilege of working with him for a couple of years, and oh my God, the way he energizes a classroom, I just realized the importance of the fact that in a classroom, it's not just content, right? It's also about energy. How do you engage the audience? How do you connect with the people? Yeah, it's been very inspiring there. And the final name that comes to mind, who's been like supremely influential on me, is a person called Deepak Jayaraman, who's written this book called Play to Potential, runs a podcast of the same name. So he's been very, very, useful, very inspiring as a mentor. He connected me with Penguin for the book that I've written, and that went through. Generally, anywhere I get stuck on my podcast, on my work, etc., like one of the first people I try and call is Deepak. He's been very inspiring. So yeah, multiple people who have helped me.
Great, thank you. Uh, the last part of it, Ravi, I think it's almost 55 minutes now. It literally flew like a river. So, global perspectives and cultural insights in storytelling. We're looking at adapting stories to diverse context and global audiences, Ravi. So, from your international exposure, what cultural nuances must Indian professionals keep in mind while telling stories globally, and how do you adapt your storytelling when working across borders and diverse teams?
Yeah, this is personally maybe a little tough one. I've not done too much cross-cultural work, and I'm aware that there is a lot of nuance here, right? So I'm aware
Mm,
of this book called The Culture Code or Culture Map. Erin Meyer is the name of the author, right? And so there's a lot of nuance here which I'm not aware of. But
sure.
having said that, from a storytelling point of view, one way to simplify this problem of communication across cultures is to think of, there are two types of approaches in communication, right? One is top down, another is bottom up.
Yeah.
So the broad difference is that top down is like bottom line upfront kind of a thing. You lead with the answer. Don't
Mm,
keep any suspense. Be direct. Be a little blunt, almost to the point of being sharp,
mm,
and that works in some cultures in the world, right? So typically, US. I've heard that the Dutch culture also prefers to for things to be most of
mm,
some fair bits of Europe also.
sure.
So now you'll have to be careful, and you have to know which cultures work it. But in some cultures, they don't want a long-winded, meandering thing to reach the answer, right? You start with the bluff and start with the bottom line up front.
Yeah.
So that is one. The second type of culture prefers the bottom-up approach, where you slowly build up to the main thing, because they probably
Mm,
don't want especially if something is harsh, don't
mm,
want it to directly hit you, right? So they say we found X and then Y and then Z, and therefore we are saying A.
mm,
So
mm,
in a way, it's the same pyramid. You might start from the bottom and then go to the top, or you start from the top and go to the bottom, right? So keep these two approaches in mind, and depending upon the audience, the context, the kind of news that you're giving, you can tweak and then say, do I do top down or do I do bottom up for this audience? And if you're not sure, I think one hack that I try and use is I ask a lot of questions.
mm,
If somebody asks me a question, I'll ask a follow-up question before coming up with a clear answer, right? Because
mm,
that follow-up question will give me more information to give a more nuanced answer. But I'll also realize, how is that person answering the question?
yeah.
Are they following a top-down or a bottom-up approach? Are they being direct and blunt, or are they being more
Mm,
long-winded, right? So that gives me a better sense, and so that will also probably be a good way to not just be cross culture, but it's more like customized to that person, who is a person that you're trying to do, right? So, but having said that, I would then like end with saying maybe read some books like Erin Meyer's book, which will give you a more nuanced answer to this one.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's talk about your book. You actually launched a new one.
Yeah.
Give us a bit of a background as to why you felt the need to write. And I know you shared tidbits throughout this particular interview, but anything creative, innovative as a punchline towards the end of the interview, Ravi? Please go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so there is one quote that I recently came across that resonated with me. That the quote is by a person called Toni Morrison, who says that if there's a book you want to read but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. So I think in a way I felt like that about this book, that I've been talking about storytelling and teaching it for many long time now, 9+ years as a storytelling professional. Before that, doing it in my other jobs also, and I've read a lot of books on the topic, right? But I always felt that there needs to be a book which is super comprehensive, but also very practical. So there are books which are good, but they sometimes tend to be in a niche, saying that storytelling through anecdotes, or storytelling through charts, or the executive presence method, right? And they're all good, or public speaking, but then it will give you a very deep dive into a narrow topic on storytelling. But then as a leader you can't be like, I'll be brilliant at charts but not in other parts. You'll have to kind of take everything into this, right? So one thing for me was, how can we take a comprehensive approach to this craft and then say that there is clarity of thinking is storytelling, like bluff technique or 139. The right charts is also good storytelling. The use of surprise and mystery and curiosity, and analogies, they are also storytelling techniques, so we have to talk about that also. The use of emotion in the right way is also storytelling. The use of humor is also storytelling techniques. The use of rhetoric, we mentioned that, right? Anaphora, etc., they're also storytelling techniques. The use of making your audience trust you, because trust is the foundation of any communication relationship, right? That's also storytelling techniques. So I wanted to have one resource, one book that covers everything in one place. So that was one way I wanted to differentiate this book, and I'm not aware of many other books which do this. Second differentiator for me was that a lot of books on storytelling take a very slightly theoretical approach to the craft, which is also important, right? Sometimes it'd be like, hey, there is this brilliant neuroscience of what happens in your brain when you narrate a story, and how our brains are synced up and all of that, right? And that is good, that is powerful. But somebody busy corporate leader will be like, that is good, Ravi, but I have a presentation to the board tomorrow. What do I do to make that neuroscience work in my audience's mind, right? So I wanted to make sure this is super practical, right? There is a small section to the why, but I'm not really bothered about saying, I'm assuming that my audience knows that storytelling works. It's important, right? How do I do it? So it's a very super specific how of storytelling techniques. And to do that, I've kind of made it super practical by adding a lot of real life examples that are about 300 examples in the book. And so every example is almost always from a corporate context, or sometimes from a government, or sometimes from a non-profit context, but they are illustrating the point of whatever, whether it is the use of analogies or humor or mystery or clarity, everything in a very vivid way. So when somebody reads it, like, that triggers a thought in my mind. I could also use it for my presentation tomorrow, right? So that's the idea that I have in mind. So since we were talking about the book, I thought I'll just quickly give a. I don't know whether this can be coming in
Yeah,
the
yeah, it's coming.
in front of me. Then you can see
Yes,
the book, and of course, we can put a link in the show notes.
yes,
So some of the first copies have come, so it's very special first copies of the book, and yeah, it's nice.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
thank you for the
I think
opportunity.
I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to buy the book,
Thank
and
you
then
so
I'm going to
much.
recommend it. I'm going to write in detail once I read the book on LinkedIn without doubt. So I'm
Thank you
telling
so
it.
much. Thank you so
Yeah, I'm
much.
telling it to everyone. So I better do
Thank
it.
you.
But lovely time I spent with you. I mean, it's actually the first time I'm talking to someone whose business is storytelling, right? And the way you detail in the way you actually narrate stories, and it was just as I said earlier, it was just like a river actually flowing down very, very nicely, very swiftly, and very slowly. I really love the conversation, Ravi. So thanks so much for spending so much time. No, we touched on leadership journey and career evolution. We looked at purpose, values, and future of work, storytelling for students, early career professionals. You gave a lot of tips. We looked at mid-level professionals, senior leaders in transition, storytelling and organization change and transformation, mentorship, and talent development through stories, and finally, global perspectives and cultural insights in storytelling. Those some aspects which we covered. I think maybe once I read the book, and then I'll give you time, maybe 9 months or 1 year or 6 months. I don't know what the frequency is. I'm going to pull you back again. Please come back, and it's going to be a different topic. altogether. But thanks a lot for your time, Ravi. Any feedback on the Monday Morning Learning podcast? Do you have a chance to see any of our previous episodes?
Unfortunately, really sorry, Ravi, I could not do that. It's been a terribly busy period, lots of travel on work, and of course, related to the book. But I shall definitely catch some of these episodes. And no, thank you for the opportunity for coming on this podcast. And thank you for such a wide diversity of questions. It's rare for somebody to think of every possible stakeholder who might be interested, and then for each of them to having very tailored questions, and it actually pushed me to really think of the right answers and prepare well for it. So thank you so much. Thanks, Ravi.
So we'll meet again in 6 months' time, Ravi.
Yes, look
So
forward. Look forward.
thank you so much for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.